Hey guys, Taki here. I recently did a big video on the Nintendo DS in 2023, and in front of me, I have most of the devices that I used. Now, I thought I covered just about everything that there was to talk about in that big video, but there's a new product related to the Nintendo DS that I want to check out. This is the Easy Flash Parallel, which is a new flash cart for the Nintendo DS that just launched earlier this month. Starting out with a quick unboxing, there's not a lot here, but this box is much bigger than most of the R4 boxes these days. If we take this thing out of the box, you can see that it comes in a transparent shell that looks pretty cool. And my intended use case is to just have this as decoration, so if it ends up actually doing anything worth mentioning, that's really just icing on the cake. In terms of pricing, I bought the card that you see in this video locally in China for around $13, but I believe it sold for closer to $10 in the first few days. I don't know if this is going to be widely available in other countries at the time that I'm making this video. Assuming that this price doesn't inflate too much when it's sold in the US or in other countries, it might be worth adding to your collection. Right now, it's a wild card. To be able to fully talk about some of the stuff that sets this thing apart, we need to look at some of the normal R4 cards that are out there right now. Here we have the collection of cards that I own. This is the original one that I had before I did my DS in 2023 video, and this is the one that I bought specifically for that video so we could talk about some of the negative aspects of the current R4 market. If we flip them over, the biggest difference beyond the transparent shell is that the SD card slot was moved over to the side. This doesn't really do all that much because you won't ever need to access your SD card while the R4 card is inserted into your DS. We need to take the shells off the R4 cards to talk about the biggest change in this new card from a hardware perspective. And what you'll quickly realize beyond the fact that the layouts are completely different is that these two have a black blob of epoxy over one of the components. This is called cob or chip on board, and there are several reasons why stuff like this is done. It's usually done for cost reasons or to save on space, but it can also make it more difficult for someone to see the components that you're using or to make it more annoying to reverse engineer. Not all R4 cards have black blobs, so I'm not sure why they went with this. On the Easy Flash Parallel, you'll see that they don't have that, which also means that we can see and identify everything that is on this PCB. And if we look over at the star of the show, we can see that this says GW1N-LV9. And if we look up the documentation online, we can see that this is a very small FPGA from Gowin. If you saw the video that I did on the FPGBC, you'll know that that handheld also uses a Gowin FPGA, but it's much bigger than this one. Anyway, I am digging the black PCB with the logo on the other side. I think it looks pretty cool, and I'm surprised that this isn't more common because there are things like this for other Nintendo devices. So now that we've taken a look at the PCB, I am dying to see what this thing holds. There wasn't a lot of information online about this product before I bought it, but it does say that this is compatible with some other R4 things. Depending on what they did, it might be as simple as just taking an SD card out of my other R4 cards and putting it in here, but we might need to rename some files before it will work. Let's hop over to the PC to start the stock install. To get our install package, we need to go over to the Easy Flash website and then head over to their product page. Once there, we can see some of the same things that are mentioned with all of these kinds of products, namely that they use a power-saving design. They also state that this is a forked wood kernel that they maintain, and the expectation is that they will open source the work that they've done at some point down the line. If we go down a bit more, we can see that this says it supports up to 32 gigabytes of SD card storage, but this should be incorrect based on how other R4 cards work. I'm going to try and use a much bigger card than this. The final thing to note is that they're openly claiming that this does not have a time bomb, which is a pretty scummy thing that some of these card makers do to force people to buy the exact same product again with a new sticker on the front. With the package downloaded, we need to format our SD card as FAT32. I'm going to use Rufus for this with a 128 gigabyte SDXC card. Simply select non-bootable under the boot option, and you will be able to change the file system to FAT32 to format the card. After that's done, we can transfer over the install package to the root of the card to try it out. Now that we've gone through and done that process, I have this 128 gigabyte SanDisk Nintendo Switch card formatted as FAT32, so it should work, even though they only claim that 32 gigabyte cards work. We're going to match this awesome transparent card with my transparent DS Lite, and we should be good to go. With the card in, we can see that the system shows this Japanese title here. All we need to do is just select it to boot into the card. And this is how things look. This background may look a little strange on camera due to the texture that they're using, but it looks fine in person. If you've ever used an R4 card before, then this is going to look very familiar to you. All they've really done here is just to create a simple reskin that anyone else could do. There is nothing on this card right now, but we can look at some of the settings to see what we have. They only ship this with this red UI, and everything else in this menu seems to be exactly the same as it would be on a normal R4 card. Right now, we can't test anything else. What I want to do is go through the process of putting a game on this just so we can make sure that it works. After that, we can explore what else this can do. I have a Donkey Kong game for the DS, and we're going to go through the process of dumping this game so we can play it from this new card. Thankfully, this process is pretty easy to do. I already have a modded DSi, but you could also do this on a 3DS if you want. It's kind of pointless because if you have a DSi, there's no real reason to use an R4 card, but we're just going to go through the process to showcase this. And I know this game is almost 20 years old at this point, but I feel like I need to tell the Nintendo Ninjas that this is for educational purposes only. Please do not come after me. Alright, so what we want to do is go down to NDS game card, and then we're just going to use the all option to dump the entire game to the SD card. Then we'll just copy that game file to the new 128GB card that we're using for this video. Okay, so we've fully finished the dumping process and put the game on the card, so we can go ahead and launch that game now. I didn't bother renaming the file, but that should not matter. And here we are. The game fully works. So in this example, I dumped a game that I own and you watched me do it. The reality is most people don't do this, but there is a valid reason for being able to do this, and it's the simple fact that the flash chips in these DS games will not last forever. That's a topic for a much bigger video, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention it here. Obviously, we can play more than Nintendo DS games like this, as well as some emulation things that are more annoying to do manually with the default system. What we really want to do is install Twilight Menu on this new card to be able to get more functionality. If this is compatible, simply swapping over an SD card should work, but this one is probably looking for a specific file name. If we are lucky, a simple rename of that file should be enough to allow us to get Twilight Menu up and running. I'm going to go through that process regardless just to see. We need to kick things off by going over to the Twilight Menu GitHub page. The latest build is from a couple of days ago, and one of the things that you'll notice if you haven't seen this before is that this software is updated pretty consistently, which is kind of impressive for hardware that is this old. If I just scroll down a bit, you can see that there are a ton of recent builds. Anyway, we will grab the flashcard package and move on to the next step. First, I'm going to go ahead and delete that Donkey Kong game before I get sued. Then, I'm going to extract the package that I just downloaded. For the next step, we need to go into the Auto Boot folder and find another card that has a similar set of files to the stock ones that came with this Easy Flash. This is trial and error for the most part, but you can usually get it on the first or second try if your card isn't listed in these folders. I'm just going to put this file in the root of my card, and then I'm going to rename the EasyDS.dat file to dat-back, and then I'll rename that file that I copied to EasyDS.dat. If we're lucky, that should be enough to get this to boot. Now let's see if it works. We select that same Japanese title again, and the first thing that we see is that we have to finish this new user menu. After we select the options, Twilight Menu loads up. This isn't the latest build, but the latest one does work in the same way. Now I tested some of this off camera, so I know some things in here should work, but playing DS games doesn't work. Let's try to launch a game just to see. At this point, the system is frozen, and we can't get out of this without doing a reset. Even if we did not do a hard reset, we would still need to go through the entire setup process again. Not super sure why this is happening, and I don't feel like digging any deeper. It would have been really cool to have this working on day one, but it should be officially supported at some point in the future. Back over to the blue DS on the stock build, I went ahead and swapped out the red theme for this one. This now gives us the opportunity to test emulators on this. I took the ones that come with Twilight Menu and I copied them over to here. I also copied over some Homebrew just to see if things work without issues. I haven't tested any of these games yet. The first game is Super Mario Galaxy DS, and it works fine. Doom also runs without issues on the DSML. Our final homebrew test is Counter-Strike DS, and if you couldn't guess, I'm using this as an opportunity to test out how this card works on all of the DS units that I own. When it comes to emulation, we should be able to do everything that I showed off in my bigger video. Not all of these emulators are without issue, but they do run surprisingly well for how cheap some DS units are these days. SNES is kind of the limit in terms of what this hardware can emulate, and I'll be honest with you, it's not great. I would probably stick to RPGs on this if you had your heart set on Super Nintendo. Platforming games are possible, but some games that require precision are going to be very difficult to play and enjoy. Genesis seems to be much better overall with acceptable performance in some popular titles. This is a system that I would have no problem playing on this. We also have access to GB and GBC through Emulation. This is a great option to go with if you don't already own a modded Game Boy, Game Boy Color, or have access to an AGS 101. When it comes to GBA, you'll be using GBA Runner 2 or GBA Runner 3 to run these games. Compatibility isn't perfect for this, but it's pretty decent. I also like how easy it is to switch between the screen that'll be used for GBA gaming. On most of my DS units, my top screen looks way better than my bottom one. Obviously, you can also play DS games on this, which is really the main reason why you'd even want to buy this card in the first place. DS games look by far the best on DS hardware, even more so than later hardware like the 3DS and the 2DS. This is the best visual experience that you're going to get across the entire line of handhelds. Everything is just better. And if you're lucky enough to have a DS with a good screen, then the experience is amazing. But there's one thing you need to be aware of when it comes to these games, and that is anti-piracy. Now, even if you went through the entire process like I did in this video for that Donkey Kong game, there are anti-piracy measures in games that will be in effect when you run them from an R4 card like this. Some of the newer R4 cards have patches in place to patch out these anti-piracy measures. I just want to give you an example of one right now so you know what it looks like. So here we have Pokemon Black 2, and this has a few anti-piracy measures. But the one that's going to affect you like right out of the box with this is that you won't be able to get any experience in battles. And I'm really just going over this right now because I didn't talk about it in the DS in 2023 video, and I feel like this is valuable information to have. So as you can see, the battle is over, and I won't get any experience. The battle will just end. Now how do we go about fixing that? If we load up the game again, we can access the cheats menu that is available before we launch the game. Typically for anti-piracy measures like this, it might be as easy as just applying a code to fix it, and that's the case for this one. You can see that they do have an AP cheat code at the top, and that's the one that we want to select before we boot up the game again. If we go ahead and enable that, and then we finish a battle, we'll be able to get experience. So that's just something that you should be aware of. There are ROMs that are pre-patched to get rid of things like this, but in this example, this is just what it would be like if you were to dump your own game that you actually own. You won't always be able to play a game by default without doing something like this unless the anti-piracy patches were applied to the firmware that this card uses. Cheat codes extend beyond stuff like this, and there's a lot of wonky stuff that you can do, but that's an entire can of worms that is too big for this video. Anyway, that's all there seems to be right now for the Easy Flash Parallel. I think it's a cool card that could get a lot better if they add new features that exist on older cards like real-time saving and better game patches. The Nintendo DS is one of my favorite handhelds, as you can see by all of the units that were in this video, and this is a cool card to add to my collection. I still don't know how widely available this is going to be in the future, but I will try to drop some links down below if I can find someone selling it. If you enjoyed this video, take a look at the big video that I did on the Nintendo DS in 2023. All of that stuff still holds true in 2024. Happy gaming, everyone. Taki out.